What's up, and welcome to That's Enough, the show full of sports topics we just can stop talking about. He's Steve, I'm Mike, and I don't think either one of us is at risk of being traded at this Major League Baseball trade deadline, but we're going to talk about it, Steve, because it's like the only thing that's going on in our sports world this week.
Yeah, well, you have more of a chance to be traded than I do because you actually work for an organization.
For a Major League Baseball team, yeah. Dude, if after all I've been through, the Mets trade me in the middle of the season for like two hosts from Pittsburgh and Milwaukee or something, I'll be so upset.
That'd be so incredible if they could. Yeah, why can't they trade other personnel? Why can't it just be like, hey, we traded our on-field host for two young ushers. They're
Right.
they're coming up. This hot dog guy is real. I think he's got real potential. He's got a hell of a voice.
Oh, that's great. Which would make sense. Like if the Mets are selling out, right? They just announced last weekend they had like 250,000 people for a 6-game series. If you got a really good peanut guy or hot dog guy in Pittsburgh that's just got no crowd to serve, come to New York, baby, for the stretch run. They could use you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, let's talk about the real stuff on the field, because by the time you listen to this, maybe your favorite baseball player has been traded, and I'm sure he's been traded for a lot more than a lot of people are proposing. We each have an angle on this, and Steve, I'll let you go first because I have been seeing a lot of stuff online, people making fun of these kind of people, and you want to say that's enough to a particular kind of any trade deadline behavior.
Yes. So the trade deadline, one of my favorite times in sports. It is so much fun to follow because there's almost always one where you're just like, I absolutely didn't see that coming. That was incredible. The faces of these organizations are changed forever, etc. What I can't stand are the suggestions that make absolutely no sense just by homers of their team, just being like, hey, we could really use Aaron Judge. So why don't they just trade like a single A prospect and a middle reliever in this magic bag of beans, and then we'll get Aaron Judge? Because it doesn't work that way. That's why. Because that's a terrible idea, and one-sided trades. I understand if you go, hey, I want to play GM, and I want to find this organization where this organization is prospect heavy and is making a run for it right now. And that's a fit with this, or this organization, just had an amazing prospect in right field and they replaced this veteran in right field. And so now they have two of them. And what do? And okay, they can spare one to trade up for their pitching. Like, fine, make those suggestions. That's fun. It is not fun to see people suggest these deliriously one-sided trades that no one will ever do.
Especially, and there are certain teams that are more guilty of this than others. I'd say the Yankees are probably one of them. The Dodgers are justified in this. Bigger market teams that kind of overhype their own prospects, right?
Yes.
And so they think, you take 3 of our guys in the minors, and we're giving you a break for Eugenio Suarez, who's hit 35 home runs before the first half of the season. And that's where it gets me, where all these people that are just so deep into the homerism, and I'll throw the Mets in there. I see some people on Mets Twitter that think, these prospects, because these are the people that you know your own guys better than the prospects of any other team. So of course you're going to have a little bit of bias where you think they're better maybe than they actually are. But that's why you don't do this for a living. That's why we don't do this for a living.
Yeah.
Because my favorite, Anthony Volpe, I feel like, is the one name I've seen more than any other in any trade package. And the guy's hitting like 218 or something. And every Yankee fan thinks that he's worth trading for Shohei Ohtani and that the Dodgers would be the ones getting the better end of the deal.
Well, look, Volpe does have a loud dad, and that's, that'll come with it. The thing that Brian Cashman is best at is, and I think this is the reason he's been GM for decades, is he is wonderful at saying for 3 years straight, we will trade you anyone except this one prospect. And then suddenly he turns around and trades that prospect for someone good, and that prospect is garbage. I don't know if you remember D'Angelo Jimenez. That's my favorite example of this. For 3 years, he's like, no one's touching D'Angelo Jimenez. And then if you don't remember him, that's good, because he did nothing. I think he hit like negative. I think his batting average was actually negative.
Which is very mathematically possible if you know anything about baseball. And that's going to lead me to my point here in a second. But it is something where, I mean, it, it goes to a lot of social media. People just want to hear themselves talk, right? And they want to make themselves sound smart. And the thing is, these prospects, it's it's also not just a volume game. Just because I can throw you 10 guys for your one, that doesn't make it an even trade. Ask anybody who's played fantasy sports ever. Like, there will be fleecings, obviously. This is just how trades work because there's so many unknowns. But the people who feel like, oh, you like, it's like we're doing you a favor by letting go of these cherished people. And Brian Cashman, my favorite example was when they were gonna get Aroldis Chapman, if you remember, back in 2016. And then, oh no, that was them, right? They traded him to Chicago, to the Cubs, got
And got him
two of the
back.
prospects back, right? Like Gleyber Torres or somebody else, and then got him right back. Like that is what I like in terms of one-sided trades, but that's a whole different ball game and a whole different
Yeah, that's
situation.
because they traded a rental. And
Right.
when you're trading for a rental, you understand that like sometimes it becomes something where the player is like Yoenis Cespedes, where he just becomes embraced by the fan base and decides to stay, although him staying fizzled out. But most of the time, it becomes a Javi Baez situation. It becomes the Mets traded away a lot to get a few months of Javi Baez, and that's unfortunate.
Which is what I'm about to get into on my side of it. That's a specific example, exactly. But I'm just like tweeting. I'm searching through Twitter right now, and there was one tweet I tried to find. It was viral from a couple weeks ago. You know, if you've seen that meme where it's like a shady looking guy holding his fingers together, and it's like trade offer, and it's I receive this and you receive that,
Yeah.
and someone, yeah, every Yankees Twitter trade proposal, I receive your best player, you receive nothing. And that's basically not just to single out the Yankees, but that's kind of what happens, these days, and especially for someone that's not a rental, which I get it. Someone that you know is going to have team control for the next year or the next two, you start jacking that price up. But this also goes for any other sport league. But I think with all the different ramifications of salary, we don't get it as much, say, in the NBA or the NFL, because you literally have to match in the NBA salaries, right? Baseball, you can say, I'm giving you 5 guys who've never been in the majors, and you send me back this big leaguer. So I think it makes it a very unique situation for baseball. But just don't, I guess, is our advice for people that are trying to mock up these trades that are so obviously one-sided. Would it get canceled in any fantasy league?
Yeah, it can be a little ridiculous sometimes. And it is, to get further, into your topic, just the idea is you don't know what a prospect is going to become. You don't. And for every time you go, oh my God, look at these 4 all-stars that were traded for one guy that washed out. There's also a ton of prospects that wash out that, even if they played 1 or 2 good years. I mean, look at the trade that comes to mind for the Mets is Kelenic.
All right, I'm going to stop you there because you're taking all my material.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We did not do a pre-production meeting, but I have all my
yours.
notes. I'm like, Steve's saying it. So do our not an ad read, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, we didn't do the not an ad read. I was like, I think we're in your topic now. Okay.
No, yeah. Before we get too far, so this is not an advertisement from a brand that does not sponsor us. Steve,
we are not sponsored by Rite Aid. Rite Aid, do you want to come in for one thing, see that we don't have it, but buy 6 other things instead? If you want every shelf to be stocked except yours, Rite Aid.
Those are my favorite kind of not an ad reads, where we're not just like shitting on a place. We kind of have a nice little compliment in there as well, because they do have a lot of good things at Rite Aid, just maybe not the one thing you walked in there.
Yeah, they're just every time and it could be a different thing every time, and they do not have it.
Amazing. If you do want to actually sponsor us, Rite Aid, that includes you. That's enoughshow@gmail.com. Back to the show. The way I wanted to talk about the deadline was what we've alluded to a lot of times now, when your side was people who think they know the best trade for their team. What I want to talk about is people who immediately know whether their team or any team won or lost a trade based on the prospects that were involved. And this again happens more in baseball than any other sport because NFL, NBA, you're trading. There is no minor leagues, right? You're basically trading, for all intents and purposes, existing big leaguers. And we've already mentioned two specific. Well, we're going to stay with the Mets because that's our two teams. And it goes both ways. Yes, the Mets traded Pete Crow Armstrong for 2.5 months of controversy riddled Javier Baez. And now that PCA got off to like an MVP type start this year and is playing the best defense in center field in the National League, every Mets fan's like, yeah, see, I told you back in the day we should have never made that trade. I told you Crow Armstrong was going to be the next Andrew Jones. I knew it. But there was that other trade that you already mentioned so astutely, Steve, when the Mets traded Jared Kelenic, among many others. And it was a long list. I looked up the trade. Jay Bruce, Gerson Batista, Justin Dunn, Anthony Swarzak to get Robinson Cano, a reliever named Edwin Diaz, and $20 million. And everyone at the time said, how dare they trade Kelenic? He's the next Mickey Mantle. The Mets don't know what they're doing, shooting themselves in the foot to get a washed-up second baseman, a reliever who's going to flame out next year, and who needs cash? Well, the Mets needed cash back then. And look at that. What has Jared Kelenic done? And Robinson Cano, we don't have to talk about him, but Edwin Diaz has become a treasured franchise icon.
Well, and that's my favorite part. People were upset that they traded Kelenic for Cano, completely ignoring Diaz.
Diaz, right.
Like, that trade was
and
so
he
much
had that awesome year already for the Mariners. It wasn't like he was a minor league reliever.
Yeah, he was a fantastic closer for the Mariners, but it was something where people were, because Cano was such a big name and such a high-priced player, that people were looking at that as the Cano trade. And it was like, no, that was the Diaz trade, where they also got money toward Cano that they ended up not even having to pay a lot of it because of the cheating.
The stuff, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't know what form it was. Pills? I don't know. Whatever. The point is that you don't always know. And this ties into the episode we talked about draft picks. And, it is something where it is completely unsure. And Crow Armstrong is phenomenal right now. But he wasn't. He had a kind of up and down first year or two. And now he's coming to his own, and that's great. And also, Baez, at the time, what an exciting player. He was, now suddenly he's, remembered who he is. Like this season, he's a lot more, or at least the first half of the season, he's, a lot more Baez than he was the last couple of years. But I think if Baez continued to be Baez and stayed with the Mets, that would have been seen as a great deal.
Yeah, if they had made, and there was the whole thing with, him losing the earrings in the field and the thumbs down with the fans, and was he a bad influence on Francisco Lindor and all that extracurriculars, right?
Yeah.
But if the Mets had made the playoffs that year, and that's why they made that trade, is because they had every expectation they would, I think you're right. That would have been looked at as a successful deal. And none of us know the future. And I think the whole point of what I'm trying to say is there is a smart kind of baseball fan that will see a trade happen in the next, week from when we're recording this and say, man, it really bums me out to lose out on this prospect because I think he shows potential, but it's worth the shot. We'll see how this plays out in a year or two. Not the A+ for this team, F- for this team. They're going to rue the day they made this deal because you just don't know. Literally, you have no idea.
Yeah. The smart fan would also admit when they're wrong. Like the smart fan.
No one ever goes back 3 years later on social media and outs themselves as being wrong, Steve. When does that ever happen?
Yeah, I'm talking about specifically one person. There's one person out there, I'm sure. But the idea, like, look, I was thrilled when the Mets signed Jason Bay. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Turns out I was wrong. I was so excited. Sometimes it goes wrong, and we have to be, we have to understand that that's part of it. But that said, trade deadline, love it so much.
The excitement, the speculation, and then the ability to be right or wrong, a year or two later. It's all part of the package, baby. All right, so come back next week. Hopefully we're both still here. Steve has not dealt me for someone else. And we thank you guys all for listening. We'd never trade you for the world.
Can I ask you a quick one?
Sure.
Do you remember a trade at a deadline that surprised you the most?
Like absolutely shocked me?
Yeah.
Probably, it always goes back to when you're a kid, right? I think when Randy Johnson got traded.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I was like, man, I never thought he was gonna move, and then he was amazing. What about you?
With a Mets trade, for me, it was Roberto Alomar. I did not see that coming at all, and I was like, "This is incredible!" And then, was it?
Yeah, it didn't.
So,
Although
yeah.
Mike Piazza was similarly shocking. It just happened in the beginning of the season, not the trade deadline. So I didn't remember it at first. That I couldn't believe it. The Mets have actually the best player hitter in baseball. That doesn't happen
in May. Like
in the middle of nowhere. My dad picked me up from school and told me the news. I thought he was pranking me. That one worked out, but add it to the list. All right, fun stuff. Hopefully you guys remember all the fun trades from your youth, and we can add some new ones this trade deadline. We'll talk to you guys next week. But for now, he's Steve. I'm Mike, and this was That's Enough.